The rarest kind of human experience. Man's adventure in the world of the unknown. That mysterious psychic world beyond our five senses.
Hello, this is Malcolm Robinson and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you for that introduction, Malcolm. I'm David Young and you're listening to Paranormal Dimensions on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I've had a lot of kind comments about the last show, which was the first show in the comeback after my short retirement from December. It was Neil Story and he was a great guest. It seems the show went down quite well, so I'm very pleased about that. We've got another great guest again today. It's Kieran Woodhouse. He's been on the show a couple of times before. He's got a couple of books out. His first one was called An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation. The second one was called Experiences of a Paranormal Investigator. Now, on my first show, I did quite a lot of a long rambling intro. I think I won't do that on the show. I think I'll just cut straight in and introduce Kieran to the show.
Hello, Kieran. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure, mate. I think it's your third visit, is it? Or is it third visit, I think.
It is third, yeah.
Yeah, because you were I think it was about a year ago.
Maybe just over now.
If my memory serves me correctly. So what have you been up to? I know I think what we were talking about last time, you had your books out. You had an introduction to paranormal investigation, and then you followed it up with experiences of a paranormal investigator. So how have they been going?
They've been going well, yeah. I tend to sell more around Halloween, for obvious reasons, and Christmas time. I do sell most of them when I'm out giving my talks and stuff to the groups. Is when I tend to sell the most of them. But yeah, they're doing well. I never wrote them to become a millionaire. I just, I wrote them just to try and get my point across, really.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully that's what they're doing. But as you know, I took a break from. I am trying to write a third book, but it's very slow going at the minute. But the second book was like that. It was kind of stuck for about 6 months. About halfway through, I just couldn't get any further. Didn't have any motivation, and then I wrote the last half in about 3 weeks. I don't know what happened, but I just had this.
You just put a spurt on, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I just had this surge of motivation, and got it done in like 3 weeks. So
yeah. I think things come to you like that, don't they? You think suddenly, I'm going to do this and get it done, and everything just comes to you, doesn't it?
It's when you least expect it, I think when I was really trying to force it, and when you do that, it's so obviously I've got a musical background as well, so I've written songs and albums and stuff. So it's when you're trying to force that kind of talent to come through. Most of the time it doesn't, and it's when you're really least expecting it, an idea comes in your head. which is quite frustrating because it's normally when you're doing something and you don't have the time or the ability at that moment to write down what's just come into your head. But when you're actually sat there with pen and paper, nothing will come. So, but yeah, that's how it works. So I'm hoping, praying that will happen again when I least expect it. An urge to write will come to me, and we can get this third book done.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I mean, as you know, I had a little bit of a break as well, so we've both had a little bit of a break from what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's you need it, don't you? I mean,
well, I did. I didn't think I was coming back when I stopped doing them at the end of December. I thought, well, really, I've taken this as far as I can take it. But I don't know. I'm really pleased that I did. But I've got a lot of people contacting me saying, oh, you know, they sort of regretted the show had gone, and so everyone out there, thank you again. It's,
so I think I was one of those people, actually.
Yeah, you were actually. Yeah. It's very nice. It's very encouraging because there's me sitting here thinking, oh, what the hell am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing, and everything, you know. And then there's people out there saying they enjoy the shows, so must be doing something right, I suppose. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there thinking what a load of rubbish as well, but there you go. It comes with the territory, doesn't it?
They don't matter. Nobody cares about them.
That's right. As I say, it does come with the territory. You're going to get your haters and you're going to get your lovers.
Of course.
So.
Yeah, of course.
But I know that you've been a bit further on from doing your books and your paranormal investigating. You've actually done a video of a recent investigation. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, so it's a documentary that we've made. So we got put in touch with a family down in Essex who were having a tough time, still are to a degree. And we went down and had a look around the house and spoke to the family, and they were really desperate at this point. You know, they'd had things. They got children who were being physically attacked. Things were being thrown around the house, targeting them. It wasn't a very nice. In fact, we were only in the house for 30 seconds, and I had a penny thrown at me. So it wasn't a very nice environment to go to, and the family were desperate. You know, that they paid a lot of money to come in and promise them that they could get rid of this thing and wave sage around and throw holy oil up the walls, which just wrecked their decorations, and told them, right, you know, £500 and we can get rid of this thing. And of course it didn't. If anything, it made it worse at times. And I said to the family, I can't get rid of this thing. I'm not going to promise you that I can. I won't lie, but I can just help you understand what this thing is and help you to, just live with it and understand what's going on. So we spent some time over, various occasions and lots of kind of phone calls and emails and messages. We put some motion sensor cameras up in the house, which captured a lot of evidence, and a lot of this is in my second book, actually. But it got to a point where I thought, there's a lot of evidence going on here, video evidence, and it would be nice for someone to see this, as well as I try to describe it in the book. It would be nice for this to be seen on the screen. So I came up with the idea of just making a documentary and interviewing the family and having some nice conversations and some good evidence and some good video footage to throw in as well. So that's what we did. I contacted a guy called Dan Hughes, who is he used to run Truth Juice in Bristol, and that's how I know him. And he's made some good documentaries with the likes of Michael Feely and stuff. So I contacted him and asked if he'd come and help me, because I can stand in front of a camera, but I don't know how to operate one. So he was my kind of videographer and producer and all-round go-to guy, and it wasn't possible without him, really. So I have to give massive thanks to Dan Hughes in that sense. But yeah, we just went down, interviewed the family, and that's what it was all about, the haunting or the entity or whatever this thing is actually took a back seat, and it was all about the family. It was about their experiences, the situation that they'd been put in, how they dealt with it, how they were dealing with it, what it had done to them as a family unit. That was the core of the documentary, and to try and get out there to people that might be in a similar situation, to show them that there is hope and to show them that they can get through this. And it comes across like that. I was quite happy with how it came out, really.
Now, I was a bit intrigued when you said about a penny was thrown at you. Now, are you talking about one of the old pennies or one of the new pennies?
All kinds, David. It was that they even had New Zealand coins thrown at them.
Really?
And and no one in the household or within their friendship circles had been to New Zealand. I mean, I did ask this thing to start throwing £5 notes, but it didn't do that. But the pennies were thrown sometimes with such force, and you can see in the documentary they're thrown with such force that they've left dents within the plaster of the walls. And it's just amazing because I told them to collect the pennies and put them in a jar and to count them and to make sure that there were no loose change around the house. So every time a new penny was thrown, they would recount the jar. And what was fascinating was the jar was never diminishing. So we were only ever adding to the quantity in the jar. So these coins were manifesting out of nowhere. They weren't being taken out of the jar and put back in. It was new coins all the time. And mainly 1p coins, but it could have been 2p coins. They were the old coins, they were new coins, they were foreign coins. Fascinating what they got. That was obviously there was a lot more severe activity, physical, like being punched and strangled and scratched, which is all caught on camera in the documentary. But the coins was the kind of the thing that the central theme of activity went throughout the whole of the situation, and to this day happens every now and then as well. But yeah, I mean, the documentary is called A Haunting in Essex. So if you go to YouTube and search for that, or if you search for the channel that it's on, which is called The Soul Paradigm, you'll come across the documentary.
Yeah. Well, I'll put a link on the Paranormal Dimensions page for anyone who wants to see it as well. So did you get punched or kicked or anything as well?
I didn't get punched. I didn't get kicked. I had a penny thrown at me, and I had a shoe thrown off my back, which is quite a good story actually. So we were downstairs in the living room, just having a chat really, and we captured some footsteps upstairs on the landing. There was no one upstairs at the time, and very clear footsteps. There was the squeaky floorboards, and then the door of one of the bedrooms squeaked open. Now, you know me, and some of your listeners might know me, but I'm not a small guy. But I raced up those stairs as quick as I could, and there was nothing there. I just caught the door moving, was all I managed to get. And so we decided to stay upstairs. So this thing seemed to just be going from room to room away from us. Whatever room we were in, it was in the next room constantly. So we decided to split up into each room so it had nowhere to go. And I was in the one bedroom. I think there's 4 bedrooms in the house. And I was in the bedroom at the end of the hallway. So trying to describe this now. So I was sat on the bed with the door to my right, and on the back of the door was a shoe rack. So loads of shoes stuck in this shoe rack. The lights are off, so I'm just sat on the bed staring at the wall with the doorway to my right. After about a minute or so, I have this thump in my back, quite sharp, so it hit me with some force. So I've jumped up and turned the torch on, and there was a shoe now in the middle of the bed, which has come out of the shoe rack. So it's come out of the shoe rack, it's done like 2 90-degree turns, 180-degree turn, and hit me in the back. So I've left the room and told the guys what's happened. I'm making it sound like I was quite calm, but I wasn't. I was quite panicky at the time. And so another guy put his hand up, said, I'll go in the room. So he went in the room. After about a minute again or so, he comes running out of the room. Now, I'd left the shoe on the bed. So he describes that he was stood facing the door this time. So the bed and the shoe is to his right. And after about a minute or so, he gets a foot in the back. And he turns the light on, and the shoe is no longer on the bed. It is now on the floor behind him.
Wow.
And all that happened in the space of a few minutes, really. And so, yeah, we were, I guess you could say we were attacked. and we did have a lot of activity. But most of the footage that you'll see is captured on the motion sensor cameras, and they're captured throughout over the course of months, you know. And this family for 3 or 4 months were living downstairs in their living room because they were too scared to live upstairs because of what was going on. So they, you know, and young children, and you know, there's such a desperate situation that they were in. And the best piece of footage that we capture is one of the children's pajamas manifesting out of the ceiling, essentially, in front of the camera. They just manifest out of nowhere in thin air. They were downstairs at the time, the clothes, and they somehow appear upstairs, coming through the roof and landing on the hallway floor.
Wow. And
again, that's in the documentary. We captured that, and we tried to debunk that as best as we could, but we couldn't.
Well, that's what I was thinking about when you said about the shoe hitting you in the back. Obviously, there was nobody anywhere near the shoe rack that could have thrown it at you, because you've got to sort of weigh all that out first, haven't you?
Of course. I mean, the first thing you do as an investigator is to try and. I always put my skeptic head on and think, if I was a complete and utter skeptic, how would I destroy this narrative? And with the shoe situation, there was no one else in the room but me, and the door was closed. And if the shoe had have just fallen out of the rack and fallen onto the floor, then you can explain that. But the shoe must have been lifted out of the rack, travelled 5 or 6 foot, done a 90-degree left-hand turn, another 10 foot to get behind me, a 180-degree turn to now be facing me, and then hit me in the back with enough force to kind of shock me. So I don't know how you can explain that.
And also for it to happen to your friend as well.
And then happened a minute later. So again, it would have lifted off the bed, kind of travelled 6 feet or so, and then done a 90-degree right-hand turn and hit him in the back with enough force to send him running out of the room.
Yeah. I bet he must have been shocked, I would have thought. Because did he actually believe that it happened to you, or did he sort of not? Because where somebody tells you something, even if you know them well, you think, nah, it couldn't have happened. Well,
this was his first investigation. He'd never been on one before.
Oh, right, okay.
So I don't know how much of a believer or how much of a skeptic he was, but having spoken to him since, he's definitely a believer now.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It must have gone through his mind that you must have been joking or something, or exaggerating, and then for that to happen to him as well, it must have really shook him up.
That serves him right.
So, how are the family now? Are they still suffering from this thing, or I call it a thing for want of a better word?
Well, you're right. It is. We don't know what this is. Maybe we can get a little bit into theories in a minute. But for the family now, it still does happen. She sent me a video the other night. She was stood outside. That she'd just got back. I don't know where she'd been, but the family had got back and they were stood outside, and she filmed the house. And the bedroom light was just flicking on and off constantly, and there was no one in the house. And they've had a lot of trouble with their electrics, and they've had it checked by the council several times and confirmed that their fuse board and their electrical wiring is okay, but they have a lot of trouble. But there's a really poignant moment in the documentary where Lee, who is the man of the house, he wasn't available when we went down to do our main day of filming, so we did a Skype interview with him. And he gets quite emotional when he begins to talk about how his family have had to get through this thing, and how the situation has brought them together, essentially. And they've never felt more like a family, because they were a very fractured family, a very disrupted family. They would argue, they would shout at each other. A lot of children, a lot of teenagers going through puberty and things like that, which is commonly linked to this kind of haunting, actually.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah.
And they had 2 twin children who were autistic as well, which is linked to this kind of activity. So you can imagine the kind of daily chaos that was going on in this house. Not in a bad way, but it was just a family unit that were living there, on top of each other, and with a lot of frustrations and a lot of hormones. And And I told them that they should take arguments outside. You know, if there's any argument, if there's any hate within the house, to take it out of the house. Don't feed this energy, and to really only concentrate on love and raising their vibration. And that seemed to work for them. And Lee is very, very big on mentioning this in the documentary and saying how it brought the family together, because they had to. They had to come together to kind of fight this thing. They couldn't stay fractured. They couldn't stay arguing. So in a kind of twisted irony, it made them a stronger family. And Lee was very kind of happy with that. Of course he was. And interestingly, their one daughter had a baby about a year ago, maybe just over now. And the 3 months before the child was born, the activity stopped, completely stopped. And I believe it's because of the joy and the happiness that a new child brings. You know, everyone was focusing on the happiness that they were going through at that time. And then about 6 months or so after the child was born, the parents split up and went through quite a rocky breakup. So again, we were bringing that negativity back. And the activity started again. And I'm doing quite a bit of research into this at the moment, but my current theory is that people create their own paranormal activity. They create their own hauntings. And this certainly fits that theory, that when they're at their most fractured and when they're at their most argumentative, that's when the activity happens. And it's almost like they're creating this negative energy. They're breeding it themselves.
Obviously, we have heard in the past about children that have got problems that can cause this kind of problem. You know, it's very difficult to put a title to it, isn't it? I mean, is it poltergeist activity, or is it actually something that's going on within you that's causing it? You know, more like
it's almost like a tulpa that, you know.
Yeah. So is that the theory you're working on?
It is. Well, the title of the book that I'm struggling incredibly to finish is Theories of a Paranormal Investigator. Very briefly, the first book, An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation, was written because of my frustration with the paranormal investigative world. You know, everyone has the most haunted effect, where they come to investigations and expect people to be possessed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
I got really frustrated, so I decided to write a book to try and tell people, you know, actually that is not what ghost hunting is about. It's actually quite boring most of the time, to be honest. But this is what you can expect. This is the equipment that you can use, and why you shouldn't use that type of equipment, in my opinion. And then that was that. So then when I wrote the second book, which is Experiences of a Paranormal Investigator, it was just a natural follow-on. You know, if people had picked up my first book and were now going out investigating for the first time, it's only natural that they're going to begin to have experiences, no matter how big or small. So I decided to write a book to try and help them understand what those experiences were. So they're kind of coming on this journey with the books. And now the third book, which is going to be called Theories of a Paranormal Investigator, because now they've had their experiences and they might be wondering what the hell is going on and trying to explain what is happening. And that's where the theories come into it. And there's a lot of theories, as you know. You've got the stone tape theory, you've got the time slip theory. There's so many theories. And one of the most common theories is that a ghost or a spirit is a dead person, and that's just something we all accept, that if you believe in ghosts, we die and we hang around, and then you get told by mediums that, well, they're here because they can't pass over, or they're here because they have unfinished business. And of course, none of this is proven. This is just what someone is telling you, and we've taken that as gospel, and you hear it repeated constantly on the TV shows, at the conferences, at the investigations themselves. This is what people believe, that you are talking to a dead person. But I decided to just question that a little bit and just kind of, take a step back and think about that. What is telling us that for certain a ghost is a dead person? Well, would a dead person really haunt a tunnel in the middle of a field where no one is? Why would they do that? Why would they decide to spend eternity just standing in a tunnel, hoping that one day someone walks past so they can say boo? And then why do people see ghostly inanimate objects? You know, I had a guy on my podcast a while ago who saw an actual ghost train. So not just the people, but the actual train, you know, the metal and the steel of a train. Well, if that was never a living thing, then how can you see that as a ghost? It doesn't quite fit in with the, you know, every ghost is a dead person. And
when you think about that, also, when you see a ghost who's clothed, why would he be clothed? Because that means that the clothes themselves have got to be a ghost, haven't they?
Precisely, yeah, that's exactly right. And why do they come back, you know, and if you died at 90 years old, why don't you come back like you were 90 years old? Why do you come back as a fit young 30-year-old person, you know?
Yeah.
So none of it makes sense to me when I actually just kind of sat down and thought about it. And this is the most commonly accepted theory, what we're discussing here. And I decided to rally against that. I mean, you look at, when you go on, you've been on investigations yourself, and someone will say, oh, you know, they're on the spirit board, and we're talking to a 14th century monk. But this 14th century monk just happens to be speaking in English. And you think, well, he wouldn't be, would he? He'd be speaking, you know, like Latin or French maybe or something. He probably.
And also, we've always only got their word for it as well, haven't we? I know exactly where you're coming from. Yes, so.
Yeah. So for all we know, this could be some guy from the 70s who's having a laugh, telling you he was a monk from 600 years ago. So I just really decided to start questioning it, and I'm beginning to think, and it's only a theory, and there might be people that agree or disagree, but as you know, David, we probably share the same opinions on this, but we are all consciousness, and we, you know, we're all just vibrating to a particular frequency. We're just energy. And when the biological vessel that we inhabit, this body, when this withers and dies, our consciousness that is currently trapped within this 5-sense reality, our consciousness is now free to leave and is free to vibrate on multiple frequencies, any frequency it wishes to. It's not just trapped in where it is now. And, you know, where it's trapped now, it can only operate within what we call visible light, which is 0.05% of the light spectrum. So once the consciousness is free of that kind of prison, I suppose, it can now operate on the rest of the 99.95% of the light spectrum. And this consciousness, in my opinion, goes back and joins what I've called the collective consciousness. And all the universe.
Which some people would call God, wouldn't they? You know,
people would call it God. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And once it's joined this collective consciousness, it's now free to do what it wants. And because time, again, this is all my opinion, because time isn't linear, and you know, everything there ever was and everything there ever will be is all now. There is only now. This consciousness knows everything, and it is everything. So when people see their dead parent stood at the bottom of their bed, or they see their dead friend kind of stood in their hallway, I don't think they're actually seeing the ghost of a dead person. I think what they're doing is they're tuning into a frequency that we would call paranormal. And it's the same frequency around the world, whether you're tuning into a Bigfoot or an alien or Mothman or whatever. It's all the same kind of frequency. And what happens when you tune into that frequency, you're manifesting what you want to see. So your subconscious is putting out into the universe what you want to see, and you're getting that back. So the Virgin Mary, you know, she only ever appears to people who believe in the Virgin Mary. She never appears to anyone else, and it's because they want to see it. So they're tuning into this frequency, and they're perceiving the Virgin Mary. So when someone sees their dead mom stood at the end of the bed, I think they're tuning into this frequency and manifesting what they subconsciously want to see. Now, I've had someone say to me, yeah, but if that's the case, then how did my mom know my name? How, you know, why did she look like my mom? Why did she know it? Why did she know things about me? Well, this thing is eternal consciousness. It knows everything about you. It knows everything about everyone. You know, it was your mum. It was my mum. It is your mum. And so this thing, of course, it can act like your mum and talk like your mum and tell you things because it is the collective consciousness. It is everything. And you're just manifesting that collective consciousness to look like your mum. And this is kind of where I'm going with it. You know, I'm kind of early doors, really. And I never set a theory in stone. I always allow the evidence to shape my theory. I'll never shape my theory to the evidence. So I'm working on it. It's early doors, but I'd be happy for people to kind of comment on this and tell me what they think. But it's just thinking outside the box, David. You know, because I'm sure I've said to you before off air that I'm getting quite bored with the paranormal world.
Yeah.
It's getting quite stale. We're still using the same equipment. We're still kind of, you know, asking the same questions, going to the same locations, sticking to the same theories without pushing the envelope, and it's just getting all a bit drab.
I think you've said that on the shows before, haven't you, as well?
I think I have.
I think we mentioned also about you mentioned about the most haunted and stuff like that. Now, I mean, I do agree with you in some instances, and I've actually had other people that I've spoken to on the show, and they sort of have been on Most Haunted, and they sort of say that they were treated very well, or they didn't see any skullduggery and all that going on. So, but I know exactly what you mean. I think what it is there, because they're making a TV show, they're sort of expected to come up with results, aren't they, for the show? And I think that's where sometimes it falls down a bit, and I think that's where Derek Acora got caught out, wasn't it, in that respect?
Yeah, I mean they absolutely are. I mean I've made my thoughts on what I've called the entertainment industry known over a long time now, and it's got me into a few arguments actually. But really, I genuinely believe that, you know, Most Haunted, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, all these people, I believe that they start out with the best of intentions. You know, they start out wanting to prove that paranormal activity exists. That's why we all do this. But somewhere along the way, I believe they've lost their integrity, and that tends to happen when you begin to put viewing figures or money, and they tend to go hand in hand, or fame. When you begin to put any of those three in front of actual research and honesty, you lose your integrity. So at some point they would have had producers telling them, look, you know, this is quite a bit boring, and no one's going to watch you just sat in the dark, not finding anything. That's not entertainment. People are going to switch off, and if people switch off, they have no viewing figures. No viewing figures is no money. No money is no jobs. So they have to begin to at least exaggerate their experiences, you know, and in some cases full out fake things. And they have been caught faking things, and I'm not saying that everything they've found is fake, because the
or a particular person might have been caught faking things, which the others may not have known about, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I was saying, you know, they will capture things. Of course they will. The time they spend investigating, it stands to reason they will capture authentic things. But I think they will have producers in their ear telling them that they need to kind of up the ante a little bit. And so they do, because they need to keep their jobs. And, you know, some people like the fame that it brings and things like that. In fact, I interviewed a guy on my podcast who worked on finding Bigfoot. And he told me that the producer told the team that the paradox of this program is you cannot find Bigfoot. Because if you find Bigfoot, there's no more show.
End of story. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the Loch Ness Monster, isn't it? You want to keep searching for it, but you don't want to find it.
Yeah, so it's almost like the opposite of what the ghost programs are doing. You know, the ghost programs are throwing this evidence in your face, even if they have to fake it. Yet these kind of Bigfoot people are actually always just leaving you on the brink of finding him, but they never do. And so it's interesting, and it's just a little kind of insight into how the entertainment industry works, because that's what it is. And unfortunately, we've probably spoken about this before, but it trickles down into the teams, just the grassroots teams, the people that are out doing it. And there are some big teams that operate across the UK now, you know, some big franchises. And they're the same. They've got to make sure you're having a good time, because if you're not and you've paid a lot of money, then you're going to leave a bad review. And a bad review means people won't go anymore, and people not going means they're not earning their money, because they do earn money out of this. So again, at what point do they begin to put the money and their popularity in front of their integrity? And just like the TV shows, they start out with the best of intentions, but that line gets crossed at some point. And
see, I don't think everybody's like that, because I know you wouldn't be, and I know I wouldn't be. So I mean, if I was running a team like that, and I found out that there was some fakery going on, I just wouldn't want anything more to do with it. And I'm sure there must be people like that work on these shows.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't mean to be coming across incredibly negative here, but I've been with some fantastic groups, some really good groups, particularly locally. I try to get out quite often with them. Obviously, haven't been able to over the past couple of years, but I've tried to get out with the local groups. I try and pick a different one each time, just to try and support them. And if I find one that I like, then I tend to go back with them again. But I've come across some really good groups, and I've come across some really bad groups. And, they are out there, the good groups, but they are quite difficult to find. But it is to taste, Some people might prefer a particular group that me or you might not like, and vice versa. But I'm just saying that people need to be careful, that there is a split. There is the entertainment industry, and there is the research industry. And the entertainment industry is fine, because we've said before, Most Haunted, it got me into this, and it's kick-started a lot of people into wanting to get into this. So that can only be a good thing. But as long as you know that it's just entertainment. I used to love wrestling, David, and I've got to be honest, sometimes if I turn the telly on and wrestling is still on, I might still watch it, but I know it's fake.
I didn't know they still put it on.
It is still on. It is, unfortunately, it is still on.
I remember every Saturday night it used to be on, but or Saturday afternoon, I should say.
It's all hidden behind paywalls now, so you have to pay like box office and stuff like that. But,
I see.
But I know it's fake, but I actually enjoy watching it. But I know it's fake. And I think the entertainment industry is good as long as you know what you're getting yourself into. As long as you know it's only there for entertainment. It's not going to further the research.
You bring that up. I know we're talking about paranormal here, but wrestling, do you think it was always fake, though? Or do you think that started out as real, and then to keep the figures, they started faking it?
I don't think it was real in the sense that, they were genuinely like a boxing match type thing. I mean, you can't deny the athleticism and the stunts that they do, and the what they put their body through. You can't deny that. And of course, you've had people die, in the ring, and through landing on their neck funny, or people have actually broken bones and stuff. So it's a risky business, but ultimately there is a script, and the script is written, and they stick to the script. But you're right, as the viewing figures became more demanding, and the audience demanded more of them, they began to exaggerate the storylines more, and exaggerate the wrestlers more, and make, it went from just being the British Bulldog or whatever, into this big character type person with a backstory, and would bring his wife out to the ring and all that kind of stuff. And it essentially became Coronation Street, but with wrestling involved. There were storylines, there were good guys, there were bad guys. It was like a soap opera, but set in a wrestling ring. That's how it's ended up, because that's what the audience want, and it's just the same here. The audience want to see ghosts. They want to see evidence, and if Yvette Fielding isn't giving it them, if Jason Hawes or Grant or Zach or whatever isn't giving them what the audience want, they'll turn it over. So, and I think it's quite a good parallel, actually, that the wrestling and the and the ghost thing.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because I mean, I'm older than you, and I remember the early days of wrestling when television was in its early infancy, and the wrestling looked quite realistic then. And I'm just wondering, as the years went on, if it did actually sort of start out as a true sport, and then just ended up as an acting.
I think
Because I mean, the way I see it, you've got to have a really good memory in order to choreograph everything that's going on in that ring, you know,
no, but
and the timing and everything.
They talk to each other, you see, and if you watch it, you can actually see it. So there'll be certain ways that they grab their body, so the other person knows what's about to happen.
Right.
And like, you know, when they're about to do their big move, their big finishing move, there's a reason. There's always such I don't know what the word is. There's a reason why it's always, you know, you always knew when the Undertaker was about to do the tombstone or something like that, because there was such a big to do about it. He took like 30 seconds to do it, and that's so the other guy knows what's coming, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't think each punch and each kick is scripted to a T. I think they're sent out there with a right. It's Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's gonna win. Make it last about 10 minutes. Undertaker, you look like
Okay, yeah, make it up as you go, and then
yeah. So they have a very loose script, but the rest of it they just fill in themselves. And you know, when they're bending down and they're about to pick them up, you can physically see them saying to each other like suplex or whatever they're about to do. So the other person knows what he's got to get himself ready for. But I think the reason it looked more realistic when you watched it when you were younger is because
a lot younger.
But it was probably because there wasn't so much of a to-do about it all. You know, it was just two guys in a ring kind of throwing each other around a bit. And so it looked really good. But now it's so unrealistic. It is so entertainment based. It is so.
Well, it actually looks
opera.
quite ridiculous now. You know, when they start coming outside the ring and everything, and then sort of even start hitting the audience and stuff like that, which are obviously, you know.
and that's it. And I, as I say, I think it's a fantastic parallel for what's going on here, because you know that they start out with the best of intentions. You know, they're walking around these haunted locations with handheld cameras. Then all of a sudden, you know, they've got like a crew of 40 people, and they've got big money producers telling them what they can and can't do and where they can and can't go, and they're throwing $5 or $6 grand at a location to be able to go investigate. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I think probably some of the American shows may suffer more with that as well. I mean, there's quite a few American ones, and they do get. I'm sorry for the American listeners out there, but I'm just giving my opinion. But they do get a bit, quite dramatic, don't they, at times? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, isn't it? You know, like it seems that every house that they go into, there's a demon. You know, and I've had some quite scary experiences, but I've never felt really, even when I had shoes thrown at me, I didn't feel threatened. Yet these guys are finding demons on street corners just hanging around, you know, and it can't be true. You know, it just can't be. But people love it. People are watching it. You can see that. You know, they're getting seasons renewed. They're going out on tour. They're making films, and so they will, as long as the audience want it, they will continue to do it. And unfortunately, what then happens is the audience wants more. It wants more, and it wants more. So they have to keep up with the demand. So they have to begin to fake things, and they have to begin to use a bit of trickery to give the audience what they want.
Can I ask you a question here, Kieran? Have you heard of the Tennessee Race Chasers?
I think were they at the?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet.
Festival of the Unexplained.
That's right. Yeah, I was actually lucky enough to meet them, and they were saying much the same thing about they hate anything that's been faked. So I've been watching their show on Discovery Plus, and a lot of what they've been doing looks actually pretty legit. You know, they've obviously not faked anything. Well, it looks like they've not faked anything, and I don't believe they don't seem the type of guys that do. You know.
No.
And they came over to me as the type of, when we were speaking to them and all that, they're all quite religious and everything. You know, they've got a little bit of religious background, and they always have to say a prayer before their investigations and everything.
Okay.
I just wondered if you'd sort of heard about them and what your opinions of them were. Because, I mean, they come over to me, as far as the American shows go, they seem to come over as probably one of the straightest, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of them. I've never seen them, but from what you've just said, I'll make sure I go away and watch some of their stuff. I mean,
definitely worth a look.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite rare, in my opinion, that you're going to get a show like that. So I'm more than happy to go and give that a look. But you know what? The other thing that this has done is it's just made anyone think that they can have a TV show. You know, there's a thing called Paraflix. I don't know if you've ever heard of Paraflix. It's essentially Netflix, but for paranormal based
No, I didn't actually
programs.
know that. No, I didn't know that. I'll have to have a look at that now.
Yeah, it's quite good. They have some quite good stuff on there, but anyone can kind of subscribe to it and sign a contract with them and put stuff on. So there are groups running around, you know, with like cameras and stuff now and putting up 5-minute episodes onto Paraflix, and it has to get something like 10,000 views for them to get like a $5 or something like that. That's what the contract says. But you know, unfortunately, it kind of just dilutes the field because again, all they're interested in is just filming something that's good enough to get them on this platform, which gets them their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
Instead of actually just focusing on the task at hand, which is just researching the paranormal. You know, like I don't, you know, apart from the groups that I go out with occasionally now, I don't really run any public events anymore. I try to stick to private investigations like this house that I've released a documentary on, because it's just, you know, I find it more compelling, you know, to go to locations that no one's been to before, to discover new things, to just kind of keep my head down and work on my own thing. You know, this documentary is on YouTube. It's not hidden behind a paywall. I'm not making any. In fact, it's costing me money to make. You know, I'm not making anything from it. And as I say, the main focus of it was the family. Having seen the state that the family were in, I just wanted to make sure that they got their word out there and managed to, you know, kind of move on with a bit of peace. And hopefully, if other families are watching it that are going through the same thing, they can take a bit of you know, a bit of comfort from it as well. So that was the main thing.
Yeah.
But
well, I know you're like me. I'm not interested in making money out of anything anyway. Maybe that's stupid. I don't know, but I know you're not that way inclined as well. I mean, the thing is, you spoke about this Paraflix. I mean, I've never heard of it, but I'll have a little look and see about it. And so I imagine you subscribe to it. But the thing is, there's so much on YouTube anyway. Why would you go and look at? You know, there's so much on there that you can find.
That's absolutely right. But you know, there's a guy around at the minute. I won't mention his name, but he's really pushing the boundary with paranormal research, and he's coming at it from a really interesting angle. He focuses a lot on these spheres, these metal spheres, and he thinks that they're controlled by some entity or by the government or something, and these metal spheres are what is causing paranormal activity. It's a fascinating theory. He's written a book, he's been on various shows, I think he's been in the newspaper, and he's got evidence to back it up. And I think that is fantastic, but hardly anyone's really heard of him.
Right. Well, is there a reason? Is there a reason you can't mention his name?
No, I suppose I could really. His name's Patrick. But I don't know. I haven't really spoken to him, so I don't really want to be.
Right. Okay.
I don't want to be. You know. But yeah. So,
no, but obviously, if his stuff's out there, he wants people to know about it, doesn't he? So.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah, I suppose you're right. I'm just kind of quickly googling so I can make sure I can send you to the right place. I'll come back to you on what because he's got a page. His name's Patrick, but he's got a page and everything where you can find out about him.
No, but you should be interested to look him up.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I mean, it'd be interesting to get him on the show, perhaps, David. He's
well, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've never interacted with him personally. I just kind of keep an eye on what he's doing, and it's fascinating what he's doing. And you know, like I say, he's developing these theories and got evidence to back it up. So his name's Patrick Jackson.
Patrick Jackson. Okay, I don't know that name, so I'll have to look him up.
No, and that's what I mean. You know, he's if you go on, I think if you go onto Facebook and search for Quantum Paranormal, you should be able to find him. But, you know, he's backing it up with all this evidence, and that is what the research field needs. It needs people who are pushing the boundaries. It needs people who are thinking outside the box, who are questioning the norm, who are tired and bored of just sitting in a dark room asking the same questions using the same equipment.
Yeah.
So that's the only way that this thing is that we're gonna move forward, you know, because I just feel like it's got a bit stale lately. Unfortunately, you don't get people like Patrick on the TV. You know, you don't get people like that. You get just the same people doing the same type of TV shows.
Yeah, they get known as the go-to person. I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. While people who are actually doing, you know, just like Nikola Tesla, really, you know, died a broken man in a hotel room, while other people were masquerading as the pioneers of all the things that he'd really created. So,
well, I'm actually, I mean, every week I'm finding different people that. You've just given me another name which I didn't know about. So there's an awful lot of people out there doing good work that, like you say, doesn't get recognised. And this is one of the reasons on this show I tried to find people that have not been on other shows before and try to get new stuff out there. You know, it's
I mean, that's commendable. It's there's loads out there, David. That
I know. I keep finding.
Patrick.
I was actually amazed. I started looking at some of the groups that were around. I didn't realise there were so many different paranormal investigation groups out there. Probably some good, some bad. And finding out which are the good and which are the bad. Unfortunately, you've got to go and test the water out first, don't you?
Yeah.
So, which I'll never be able to do. But I know there's such a lot out there. As I say, you just got to take your chances when you do go with one of these things. Did you ever listen to my show last week with Neil Story at all? Did you get a chance to ever listen to it yet?
No. So you're on my list. I have a playlist.
No, I just wanted
to all of your shows.
I just wondered if you had any sort of opinions, because he's been doing a lot of research into like the Dracula story and Bram Stoker and stuff like that. Have you got any theories about Dracula? Do you think he existed, or do you believe in vampires?
Wow. I think he was the second guest I ever had on my podcast. Was a guy called Todd, and he spoke about the germ Dracula, basically, and he proposed that all Dracula mythology can be traced back to disease, and it was all a big metaphor or personification for illness. So the things that you could get rid of it, things with like garlic and holy water and all this kind of stuff. He really drilled down into it and basically took Dracula or a vampire and made them into a disease, and the whole of the mythology around it was actually all about curing disease, and it was fascinating to hear. And I've never looked at vampirism the same since that conversation, because he put it across really well, and it was quite a good discussion to have. So I guess if you're asking me, is there such a thing as Dracula?
Well, not Dracula as such, but vampires. I know Dracula's yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing that came out of that show was that Bram Stoker actually developed the Dracula character, but he was actually encouraged by the Jack the Ripper stories, which were made connections there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, just like with anything like this, such a big famous book such as, Bram Stoker's book, has only served to fuel the fire, hasn't it? It's kind of, I imagine when that book was released, there were sightings of Dracula all around the world.
Probably, yeah.
Because of that book. So I think just with all these kind of things, there's probably a morsel of truth within it. Like take a Bigfoot, for example. They're in all ancient cultures, almost all ancient civilizations.
They are all over the world as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. You go to America, and the ancient Indian tribes have a story about a big hairy man that lives in the forest. You go to the Alps, and the people that live in the Alps have stories about big hairy men that run around the snowy mountains. So each culture has the same story, essentially. So there has to be some truth in it. There has to be.
They've actually got one in Scotland as well, I understand.
Have they? I did not know that.
Yeah, so I found out a couple of years ago there's supposed to be one that lives in the mountains in Scotland.
Oh, right. Well, I've heard there's one in...
Whether he wears a kilt or not, I don't know.
The big question is, David, what does he wear under his kilt?
Yeah, well, we won't go into that.
But, I think it's probably the same with Dracula. There's a morsel of truth to it. And but I do recommend people go and look into this kind of germ thing where Dracula or a vampire is the personification of disease, and the whole story is based around trying to cure that disease and that disease killing people.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there was the Vlad the Impaler stories, which I think was also quite a development where Dracula came from as well.
Massively, yeah. I mean, didn't his daughter used to bathe in the blood of her victims?
Yeah, it's quite horrific, actually.
Well, it's disgusting, but just like Bram Stoker based his character on Jack the Ripper, who was another highly disturbing character. It goes to show that they're all based on some kind of truth. Vlad the Impaler did exist, and he was a horrible, horrible person. Probably fit in the UK government now. Probably not the same model, but
sorry about that, Boris.
No, you're not.
You know me.
But I think that they're all based on real things and real characters, but how much truth there is to it, I think, is debatable.
Yeah. Now, it's all fascinating stuff, though, isn't it?
It is. It's all, the fact that this guy, this Neil, is going out researching it in such depth is amazing. Like the guy that I had on my show, the amount of research he put into, linking disease to vampirism was, you could do nothing but be astounded by it. And I will sit and give time and energy to anyone who has a theory, no matter how out of this world it sounds, as long as they can back it up with evidence. As long as they can back it up with some good stuff, I'm willing to listen to anything. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that aren't willing to listen to a theory if it doesn't fit their own theory. Yeah. And this is, I was on a show the other day and we got into this, how that what people are doing is they're actually, the reason they defend their own theory so much is because they're fighting for relevance. And it's quite interesting because if you have, you go to these conferences, I know we both go to these type of things, and you have people there who one's arguing that UFOs are interdimensional, one's arguing that UFOs are interplanetary, one's arguing that UFOs actually don't exist, and all that kind of stuff, which is great. And as long as they all have their own evidence to back it up, then you can kind of soak it all up and make your own opinion, and that's what it's all about.
Which obviously they could also be both, couldn't they? It could be interdimensional and extraterrestrial.
Right. There's nothing stopping that being a possibility. But what happens, you'll have one of these people will completely, go at the other person and try and, kind of run them into the ground and try and debunk them and try and just all round be nasty to them because their theory doesn't fit, the theory that they have. And I think whilst that is just a nasty thing to do, I think it really speaks to what's wrong with this kind of thing, paranormal research, UFO research, it's all the same. What's happening is people are becoming very insular, they're becoming, they're focusing on their own theories and their own 15 minutes of fame and all this kind of stuff, and they're not willing to listen to anyone else that threatens their existence within that world. Because if I was a proponent of my theory, which is that ghosts aren't dead people, it's actually consciousness, and someone, and someone else believed actually they were dead people, and he could prove that my theory was a load of rubbish, and I was earning a lot of money off this theory, I've written books, I'm on TV shows, I'm on the circuit, I would do anything I possibly could to keep that going because I'm making some good money out of it, So I'm going to do what I can to discredit this other guy and to make his name mud because he is threatening my relevance. And, you get these, I call them circuit men, who kind of do the circuit as a job, essentially, go around peddling the same stuff for decades and decades, not really coming up with anything new. They're just giving the same talks all the time, and they're living off this. And if anyone threatens that existence, that it's a knee-jerk reaction to try and have a go back. And that's what we see with this infighting, this politics that we have. It's basically everybody doing their best to stay relevant. And if everybody just forgot that for a second, downed their weapons, and actually listened to what the other guy was trying to say, and thought, well, that's quite a good theory, actually. And there's elements of that fit my fit. There's elements of this guy I mentioned earlier.
Because they could go on further with that, couldn't they, as well?
Precisely. And this guy I mentioned earlier, Patrick, whilst he doesn't have exactly the same feelings that I have, a lot of them do cross over. Because I've given the time to look at his research and to read his book, which is fascinating, and I think, that's similar to what I think, and that's similar to what I've said. And then what happens is that helps you further your theory, and it helps further your research by looking at other people instead of just refusing to read his book because he doesn't fit into your little kind of box of your theories. You just refuse to acknowledge him. And when you do acknowledge him, it's just to call him names or to try and debunk him or to discredit him. And this is what's happening in all of these type of fields, I think. And it's an absolute crying shame because it's not furthering anyone's research. It's not benefiting anybody. It's just all it's doing is causing rifts and causing the investigative field to just go stale and go nowhere.
Yeah. It's well known, though, as you know, in the UFO field, there's quite a lot of antagonism. People seem to have a go at each other. For why, I don't know, because the way I see it, we're all after the same thing,
Exactly. We're all after the same thing, and if they actually just bang their heads together in a good way, and, I've got this puzzle piece. What have you got? Oh, well, I've got this puzzle piece. How about you? I've got the corner piece. And if they did that, they might find that actually they're all right, and none of them are wrong, and all of a sudden they can come up with this super theory, and they might be able to get to the bottom of it all instead of just completely blanking them and blocking them out because they don't fit their current theory. And as I say, you just said you don't know why they do it. In my opinion, they do it to stay relevant. They feel threatened. They feel like, if somebody's theory becomes more popular than theirs, then they are no longer relevant. And just like we said with the TV shows, if they're no longer relevant, no longer popular, they no longer earn a living, they no longer sell books. Yeah. And to them, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are a couple of researchers, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a couple of researchers out there that I don't particularly like as people, but I respect their work. And, I've got several of their books on my shelves. But as people, I don't particularly like them,
But you don't have to like them, though, David. Because all you're doing, you're looking at their work, you're looking at their research. If it doesn't matter whether the nicest bloke on earth or the nastiest bloke on earth comes up with a good theory with good evidence to back it up, because that's what's happening now. And again, I know you have this opinion, it's cancel culture, this kind of thing. Just because one person says something that you don't agree with, all of a sudden we discredit everything about that person. Or if a person that isn't very popular says something that's right, nobody listens. Try and think of somebody like Katie Hopkins, for example. Everybody hates Katie Hopkins.
I don't. I quite like her.
I'm talking about the general public.
Yeah.
But every now and then she says something, and you think, well, you can't argue with that. What she's just said is right. Now, does that mean because I might not be a fan of her and she wouldn't said something that I didn't like, does that mean when she says something that's right, I should now discredit it?
Yeah,
or do
exactly.
I still have to listen to it? I still have to listen to it.
Yeah.
So you've hit the nail on the head that you're doing it right. You might not like them as a person, but their research is important, and what they're putting forward for the purpose of research is good. So you're not listening, or you're not kind of looking at the person. You're looking at the evidence, and good evidence is good evidence, and good research is good research. It doesn't matter whose name sits at the top of the paper or whose name sits on the front of the book. If it's well researched information, it's irrelevant who's come up with it. But as I say, a lot of people will look at the name, look at the person, and probably won't even read the book, let alone put it on their shelf. And that's a crying shame.
It is, yeah, I agree. I mean, with the Katie Hopkins example you gave, I think we were told to dislike her or disbelieve her by the mainstream media. And, you know, it's a bit like David Icke, isn't it? We're all supposed to not like or not believe what David Icke says because the mainstream media tells us to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you know, if we take that example and we use the mainstream media as a metaphor, you know, there are a lot of these mainstream medias within the paranormal industry, within the UFO industry, and these mainstream media type of people get to dictate whose research comes to the forefront. You know, they get to dictate who becomes popular, who goes on the circuit, who gets to, you know, sign big book deals or go on TV. And if there's someone that they don't like, irrelevant of how good or important their research is, that it will never see the light of day. Simply because of this infighting, this politics, and in my opinion, it has to stop. It never will.
It never will. No, I think it's always happened. I think it was always there before I came along, and it'll always be there after we're long gone as well, Kieran.
Yeah, but you know, all we can do is just be like sponges and soak in all of the information from anyone, just like you are doing. You don't like them, but you've got their books on your shelf, which I think is fantastic. Yeah,
or you know, maybe not liking them. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. I don't know. Maybe it's sort of. Oh no, I won't go any further with it anyway. But I'll tell you what. I'll just dig myself a hole. Anyway, I mean, I don't. We're going to be coming to the end of this in a minute. Are you coming to the Awakening in Blackpool this year?
I'm not. It's we moved house like a month, 2 months ago, so I wasn't sure what funds would be like.
I see.
Because it can be quite expensive when you're going for a weekend to Blackpool.
Yeah, I mean, I booked it. Oh no, as soon as they brought out the tickets, it must be about 10 months ago.
Yeah, yeah.
If anyone was listening, it's the Awakening in Blackpool. It's for Friday the 24th, 25th, and 26th. I think they're actually sold out now, the tickets, haven't they?
They are, yeah.
As I understand it. So, but I'm just wondering, because we've got these train strikes coming up for that weekend, if it's going to cause some problems. Well, it is that particular weekend, isn't it?
That's not good.
So, just for people out there, if you are going to be headed to Blackpool and there's train strikes, I think you better try and book a coach or something. If you need to, you know, if you were thinking about going by train. When I'll be going by car, so all the roads will be clogged up probably.
Yeah.
But
you'll be going.
It's a shame you're not going. I was looking forward to seeing you, but never mind.
No, I know it's a shame. One day we will meet. One day, David.
Well, when you come down for another haunting in Essex, you'll have to give me a call.
Yeah, well, I've told you before, we've got family friends that live on Canby Island, so.
Oh yeah, of course, that's right. Yeah, that's where I am. So.
Well, I was trying to. I've done talks for the Essex Paranormal Group.
Yes, I know.
Mark Dalton.
Yeah.
But I did that during the lockdown, so I did it via like Skype or Zoom, and everybody tuned in to watch. So it was like a digital presentation. So maybe one day I can go down there and give an in-person talk, and you can come along to that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Go and talk, because you've got the UFO group. I think Andrew Collins is coming in October.
I've seen that, yeah.
To the so I shall be going to that.
That looks good.
But I'll be seeing Andrew at Awakening in Blackpool anyway.
Yeah.
Because he only lives up the road, you know. From he lives in Lee, I think.
He's got an English accent, isn't it? But he sounds like he's from down south though. His accent. Yeah,
I think he was a Londoner.
Right, okay.
Originally.
Wigan now.
I could be completely wrong. No, he lives in Lee, I believe you'll find.
Oh, right. Okay,
Lee's just up the road from me.
Oh, right, okay. I thought you meant Lee. There's a Lee up in Wigan.
Oh, right. No, it's Lee. He's just saying that just outside the South End here.
Ah, right. Well, that makes sense. He's got the accent for it.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry for the listeners. We're all going off on a tangent here, but anyway, Kieran, it's been fantastic having you back on the show. You'll have to keep in touch and let us know what you're up to. And as I say, if ever you're coming down this way, give us a shout. And you're always welcome. Always drop me for a coffee or more, have a meal or something.
Great.
And yeah, well, as I say, it's a shame that I won't be seeing you in Blackpool, but I'm really got some good hopes for that, because I think it'll be a great show. That
Oh yeah, it'll be fantastic.
There's some fantastic speakers.
Yeah.
Okay then. Right, well, we'll leave it there. Good luck with your books. And what's the name? What's the name before you go? What is your podcast called? So in case somebody wants to check you out.
So it's called the Paranormal Paradigm Podcast.
Paranormal
Paradigm. Yeah. Say that when you're drunk.
And they can find it on YouTube, can they?
YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, all of those kind of things. There's been about a year hiatus. I've not done much with it recently because I've been focusing on the documentary and and having a child and stuff like that tends to get in the way. So I do plan on starting it again, but I don't know when. But there's about 30 or 35 episodes to get your teeth into for now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'll do, I'll try and put a link on the Paranormal Dimensions page, and also for your little film and everything. And so if anyone wants to see it, you'll come to the Paranormal Dimensions page if you haven't done already on Facebook.
Brilliant.
Okay then, Kieran, I'll let you go, and thanks for coming on again, and it's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honour.
Yeah. Take care of yourself, Kieran. On you go. Cheers. Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.
There we are. That was Kieran Woodhouse. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. And I think you'll join me in wishing Kieran good luck with his forthcoming book. Right. Next weekend, I shall be in Blackpool, here in the UK, obviously, for the Awakening conference. So, obviously, if you happen to bump into me, if you're going to be there, please say hello. My next guest is going to be Gary Osborne, who wrote the book, The Rendlesham Enigma, with Jim Penniston. A very rare interview indeed. So if you're interested in the Rendlesham Forest incident from 1980 and you've read Jim Penniston's book, well, Gary Osborne is the man mainly behind that book. Please join me for that one. And if you'd like to get in touch with me at any time, my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. Okay, right. Well, that's it then. You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm David Young. Thank you for listening. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK